I'm sure most of us had a favorite TV show growing up. I want to say mine was probably Sesame Street. And then I also love the Muppets. Well, maybe the Muppets was my favorite. The Muppets were a little weirder, you know? So today we're going to talk about a book that has to do with a beloved children's show called Mr. Magic that maybe existed or maybe it didn't. Mr. Magic by Kiersten White. This is the second book I've read by this author. First one being Hyde, which I know got a lot of mixed reviews. This one I really liked. I thought it was really well done and I had a lot of fun with it. It follows these different characters who used to be on Mr. Magic. Now, so it did exist, but there is no tapes of it anywhere. There's no record of the producers, of when it was recorded, of where it was recorded. And so on the internet, you know, you have Reddit forums that talk about the show and people's memories of it, but no one can find any actual like record of its existence. Well, years and years later, now that these kids are all grown, they're like almost 40, most of them, and they're all getting back together for a podcast that they're going to do about the show Mr. Magic. All of them wind up back at this house that their parents used to live in when they recorded the show. Their memories of the show each seem to be all different. The main character, she doesn't remember any of it. She didn't even remember she was on the show. But when she meets these people again that she knew, like, she knows in her soul that, like, she knew them. She just knows she knew them, but she doesn't remember them. But her whole, like, she feels the energy. Like, she knows somehow that she knows these people and that they're very dear to her and they understand more about her than she may understand about herself. And the main character's name is Val, and she's the one that doesn't remember. And then there's the other characters. There is Javi, Isaac, Jen, and Marcus. And then, oh yeah, there used to be another member who went missing. And this show ended when this other person went missing many, many years ago, and something bad happened. And people say on the Reddit forums that they kind of remember something really terrible happening that ended the show, but no one really knows and no one really remembers. And Val kind of like asks about this, but everyone's kind of like, I don't remember, it's all too confusing, da 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 da. So then they start trying to figure out, like, who was Mr. Magic? What was Mr. Magic? Because you never really saw his face. And he was like this big weird character that wore a cape and I guess created magic, and he was just a part of the show, which as the show went on, the kids in the show stopped calling on him less and less. And the vibe you get is that because this guy was not really good news at all. And as you get deeper into it, there's such a psychological thing going on here with this. Like Mr. Magic was trying to train these kids to be like good little citizens in society, you know, and kind of like grooming them not to act out. It seemed like they're pretty opposed to kids being gay. So that was also another thing that it seemed like they were trying to instill in them. It seemed like these kids were in the show that their parents were upset with how their behavior was and they wanted them to act a certain way. And so they were put in here to try to like get that behavior out of them. And Mr. Magic was supposed to do this. And all this seemed to be doing was just like dulling who these people were, who these kids were, who they were trying to grow into be, and making them into these like dull images of themselves. But everyone remembers it different. They all remember just being happier there. And like they were never happier than when they were in this show. But it seems their memories aren't exactly what possibly happened. And so it's coming to this realization. And there's so much to the story that was so psychological and you see it and you're like, oh man, just how different sects of society and religions want to kind of control how you are, what you should do, how you should dress, who you should love and whatnot. And so I was curious too about like what she was conveying throughout this, because you know it's a lot of it is right from what you know, right? So I read the afterword in the book, and apparently Kiersten White used to be Mormon, and this is like a recovering Mormonism thing. So I found that quite interesting, and just the emotional turmoil that they all kind of went through as they got older and in life, and that they somehow were just stuck in a place once they left that show because they all thought that Val left them, but her dad had actually taken her because he kind of knew the show was evil and what it was doing. Her mom didn't really care. Also, just there's so much stuff that comes to light that, man, the emotional and psychological trauma that is in this book, it's disturbing. And the things too the characters do, that they kept trying to chase like this happiness to make themselves happy, but they weren't really experiencing it or doing it right. And I'm turning this into a whole like psychological analyzation of life and religion and all sorts of weird stuff. But anyways, I'm gonna stop right now. Stop while I'm on this track. But this book's great. I really liked it. I liked where it came from, how it came to all these friends, and how they were still just all so close and loved each other, how they were able to somewhat overcome and defeat the badness that was in this weird television show. The reason they were out there doing this podcast too is like, who called them to do the podcast? What was the intention of this? Is there darker intentions? Is it a trap? And yeah, it's kind of a trap. But they come together and they figure it out. I would highly recommend this book. It is weird and emotional, and just it was a really great read, and I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of books that are weird and horror, next video coming up will be another weird horror book, so stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.